So I am going to say first off, Happy New Year to everyone. It's the first video of 2022 for the podcast, but I'm gonna go over Dr. if only Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book. And after this, I'm gonna share an excerpt. Well, not an excerpt, but a speech that he gave. It's like a 2-minute speech. But, you know, everyone's talking about Dr. Fauci as his hero, and he's amazing, and everybody in public health agrees with him. Every doctor, every physician, you know, well, physicians are doctors, every cardiologist, everybody, all scientists, every board member of any university board, everybody agrees with Dr. Fauci. And that's not actually the case. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. released a book called The Real Anthony Fauci. And it's a really good read. It's a wild read. Your jaw's going to drop to the floor every time you read something about it. But I recommend that people really read it and get into it. It's something that I think everyone needs to know. And they need to know that this tyrant in chief, this tyrant who's been in charge of our public health system for 50 freaking years, has been hurting us. So let me read you a passage real quick from Robert Kennedy Jr. So this is Bobby Kennedy's son, who's been a public health advocate and a environmental lawyer who has sued the government over many years and its regulators because of their malpractices. That's what he's done. So let me read you this excerpt here. It says, "This is a product of my own struggle to understand how the idealistic institutions of our country, built to safeguard both public health and democracy, suddenly turned against our citizens and our values with such violence. I am a lifelong Democrat." I kind of disagree with him there. I don't know if I would do that, but I am a lifelong Democrat whose family has had 80 years of deep engagement with America's public health bureaucracy and long friendships with key federal regulators, including Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, and Robert Gallo. Members of my family wrote many of the statutes under which these men govern, nurtured the growth of equitable and effective public health policies, and defended that regulatory bulwark against ferocious attacks funded by industry and often executed by Republican-controlled congressional committees intended on defunding and defaming these agencies to make them more industry-friendly. So there you go. This is both parties, by the way. Both parties are doing this. I built alliances with these individuals and their agencies during my years of environmental and public health advocacy. So there you go. So I'm just pointing these things out. I watched them, often with admiration, but I also watched how the industry, supposedly being regulated, used its indentured servants and indentured servants on Capitol Hill to systematically hollow out those agencies, beginning in 1980, disabling their regulatory functions and transforming them financially into sock puppets for the very industry Congress charged them with regulating. So right there he's saying, hey, these guys were supposed to regulate these industries, but Congress, under the Republican and Democratic parties, has turned these agencies into industry-friendly people, meaning they're going to be in cahoots with them. That's what he's saying there. He continues, my 40-year career as an environmental and public health advocate gave me a unique understanding of the corrupting mechanisms of regulatory capture, the process by which the regulator becomes involved with to the industry it's meant to regulate. So what he's saying there is he's understanding that these people they're meant to make the rules and regulations and to try and rein in these corporations. Now they're all in cahoots with them, as I just said. He says, I spent 4 decades suing the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, and other environmental agencies to expose and remedy the corrupt sweetheart relationship that so often put regulators in bed with the polluting industries they regulated. So there's no regulation anymore. Because now, as he exposed in those lawsuits, these people were in bed with them. Among the hundreds of lawsuits I filed, perhaps a quarter of them were against regulatory officials making illegal concessions to big oil, King Coal, and the chemical and agricultural polluters that had captured their loyalties. I thought I knew everything about regulatory capture and that I had, and that I had armed myself with an appropriate shield of cynicism. But I was wrong about that. From the moment of my reluctant entrance into the vaccine debate in 2005, I was astonished to realize that the pervasive web of deep financial entanglements between pharma and the government health agencies had put regulatory capture on steroids. The CDC, for example. Now, before I go on, so all that he's saying there is, oh my God, these guys are supposed to regulate the industries like King Coal, like the chemical and agricultural industries, like Big Pharma. These guys are supposed to tell them, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be doing that. Hey, we're going to keep our country healthy. This is what you have to do. And instead, they're taking their money and they are... So they're taking their money and now they're taking royalty payments, loyalties from these people. Now, the CDC is involved, and let's read that. So he says the CDC, for example, owns 57 vaccine patents and spends 4.9 of its $12 billion annual budget as of 2019, buying and distributing vaccines. Why does it own patents? It's supposed to give out patents, not own patents. Corruption? The NIH, National Institute of Health, owns hundreds of vaccine patents and often profits from the sale of products it supposedly regulates. High-level officials, including Dr. Fauci, receive yearly emoluments of up to $150,000 in royalty payments on products that they help develop and then usher through the approval process. Wow. So he's saying these guys all take money from them. All of them. They take money from these industries. The government owns these patents. They profit from the sales, which is why they price gouge you. And then Dr. Fauci, Robert Gallo, Francis Collins, and all these other guys also profit. So not only does Fauci make $417,000 a year, more than the president of the United States, he also makes $150,000 on top of that for any drug he develops. This is corruption at its best. This is how they get you. Hey, you approve me faster? You approve this drug without scientific approval? I'll give you $150,000. And Dr. Fauci's like, oh yeah, I'll approve it. The FDA receives 45% of its budget from the pharmaceutical industry through what are euphemistically called user fees. When I learned that extraordinary fact, the disastrous health of the American people was no longer a mystery. I wondered what the environment would look like if the EPA received 45% of its budget from the coal industry. I just need you to understand this, and I'll do another video on some more. They are taking money in the United States government from the industries they are set to regulate. They are then making that a part of its budget. The government itself is selling vaccines. They're not a company. And then with your tax dollars, they're profiting from it. Because, well, the big pharma pays them. You cannot tell me that Dr. Fauci is not corrupt. You cannot tell me that Robert Gallo, that Francis Collins, that any of these guys are not corrupt. You cannot tell me that they are not in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. 57 patents in the CDC. The National Institute of Health has hundreds of patents. And then they profit off of their sales. Now do you know why they're pushing the vaccine? Now do you know why they're saying, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the boosters, get the boosters? Because they are helping to develop these vaccines. The research, the development, the approval process. If they push it out on behalf of the big pharma companies, they pay them. That's the reason they're having you get the vaccine. Not for your health. They know better. It's not for your health. It's for their profits. And Fauci knows it. So, yeah. You need to go check this book out. It's The Real Dr. Fauci. Check it out on Apple, Amazon, Audible, wherever you got to get your books. Wherever you get your books, check this out. Because this is insane.